think everybody's enjoying these. So I know I am.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely enjoy it. Getting into my weaker positions now, but we'll see. We'll have fun with it.
We're going to dig this out. People are going to enjoy this one, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Folks, welcome back to another Stampede Blue Colts cast. We are here again, continuing our zip through the Colts positions of need, looking at the NFL draft with our guy, Zach Hicks. Zach, what's up, my man?
Hey, man. Thanks again for having me on, and excited to talk some receivers tonight.
Absolutely. This is kind of one of those positions for the Colts where we, I've had trouble with this one, honestly. I mean, you know that the Colts, need, a wide receiver, but, Andrew Luck, Frank Reich, this offense, they just really made do with what they had this past season. I mean, just a lot of guys that just kind of ho-hum, position players, Pascal. I mean, just the whole group. I mean, it was just a very hodgepodgey kind of group after TY for the most part, and I just kind of, I look at this and think, the Colts could definitely use a young guy, which I think they'll go on. We know that they've got Deon Cain coming up next year. So it's kind of like, do they need one? Is it free agency? How do they acquire one? But this is a fun group though to look at. I don't think that this group is, I don't think there's that, rookie all pro type receiver out of this group necessarily. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but there's a lot of fun guys in this group.
Yeah, certainly. It hasn't been like, it's not as deep, or well, I won't say as deep. It's not as star heavy as the 2020 class that we're going to get next year, which has a ton of big names and a ton of really good prospects, which I'm excited to go into next year. But this class is really deep. I mean, I was writing down names just to kind of have as my little notebook next to me here, just so I can look off names. And I wrote down 20 something names, and there were still guys I left off that I was like, this guy intrigues me and I want to talk about. There's 20 to 30 receivers in this class where I'm not saying they're going to have great NFL careers, but making a roster, I could see 30, 35 guys even making a roster that are receivers in this class. It's a really deep class. There's a lot of different guys that do a lot of different things, but overall, this receiver class, it's really deep. It has a lot of intriguing talents for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of liked, the way that the Colts kind of threw their thing together. Obviously, I was never a big fan of Ryan Grant. I made that pretty well known from the beginning. Although he did okay early in the season, he kind of disappeared. But I was just really impressed with Dontrell Inman. Even though he's not hitting that 30 threshold, I hope they bring him back just kind of as that guy. I wouldn't even and I don't say this in a way to kind of downplay Chester Rogers, but I guess I would rather see them bring another young guy in and keep a guy like Inman who seemed to have a specific role within the team, a heavy targeted guy on third downs, kind of that makeshift, no speed, not real much after the catch, but a guy who could definitely act as a possession guy, and then bring it, and maybe see what Deon Cain does next year, maybe let Pascal grow a little bit, and then bring in another, a rookie here out of this group, because like you said, this seems like a fun group. This seems like a group that it may not be star heavy, but any of these guys could make a roster and really play. So let's talk about these guys. Let's talk about them kind of from both their positions. We're going to look for the outside, primarily the outside receivers, and then we'll look at some of the slot guys as well. Obviously, DK Metcalf, a guy who's making some noise, down at the combine with his size and his weight. I saw 1.9% body fat today. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw the Rappaport tweet.
Jesus.
I know. Well, so I think he got some wrong information there because I think
right.
Yeah, that's physically impossible.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, from my knowledge, bodybuilders, right? When they get ready for competition, they dehydrate themselves and they get their body, their body fat down to about 3 or 4%. And that's completely unhealthy. If you do that for multiple days, you're going to die. And that's 3 or 4% body fat. So Metcalf being at 1.6 or 1.9 is, if he did somehow get he's going to die within a couple of days. So hopefully,
So
it wasn't.
He's no longer draft eligible. So let's move on to the next.
Yeah. So I think it was probably around like 10%, which that's insane still. 10% is pretty crazy. But yeah, the 1.6 or 1.9 is a little bit low than what he should be at. But if someone told me that right up without me even thinking about it, I wouldn't be shocked, because that dude is ripped. Like, everyone saw the picture on Twitter of just how shredded he is, and he looks like a truck playing receiver. So, I guess at its face value, I mean, I wouldn't even, I don't blame Rappaport for tweeting that out, I guess.
Well, I mean, look, I don't know. I didn't know that about body fat.
No.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody will thank you for the health lesson there, because I didn't know that. I didn't know that you would physically die if you were under
Yeah, it's like body fats are natural. Like, you need to have some body fat to survive. It's a natural part of being a person. So yeah, if you're at like 1.6 or even 3 or 4%, which is what bodybuilders get down to, it's not very healthy at all.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Tell us about him. What's he got? He's a pretty high. I mean, he's not just high ranked among receivers. He's kind of high ranked in this class as well. So what does he bring to the field?
Yeah, so he's got all the upside in the world. I mean, from an athletic standpoint, from tracking the ball standpoint, from catching it in traffic, like he can do pretty much everything it is. It's just he's a bit of a project, because Ole Miss's offense was atrocious, which we can all kind of attest to, because if you watch any bit of that film, you can say, how is this team not winning more games when they have 4 draftable talents at pass catching positions, the 3 receivers and the tight end Dawson Knox, and then they even have a potentially draftable quarterback. So how were they not winning games? That offense was not equipped to really win games. It was a really bad offense. I even read somewhere that they were told some routes just to get open. Like, that was the route for the play, was just get open.
Literally just drawing it in the sand.
Yeah, just terrible. Like, they literally, like, I think it was AJ Brown interview I read. It was like he had some routes where it was just get open. So I mean, it was a bad offense. So you have to coach him out of that. You coach him into like a real NFL scheme, a real route tree. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, he just didn't play that much. I mean, he missed a lot this year with a neck injury. He was a redshirt sophomore, I believe, this past year when he declared. So, he hasn't really had that much playing time, not that much production. Mm-hmm. But, when you watch this guy play, he could be, I think he measured in today at 6'3" or 6'4", like 220 pounds. And he might run the 4.3s, 4.4s. I mean, that's going to be just flat out insane if he hits those numbers. So he's a bit of a project, but he has all the tools. I mean, I don't want to say like Calvin Johnson, but he has like the tools of a guy like that. It's just he's definitely a little bit raw. He's going to take some coaching, but man, he might go top 10 if he runs the 4.3s or 4.4s like some guys are projecting.
Yeah, I mean, teams are going to slobber all over that too.
Yeah,
I mean, they can say what they want about when it comes to the combine, but just, I mean, look, man, we all know what they do. They just all get those googly eyes, and they just can't help themselves. Is he? Let's just move down the board. Who's somebody who's in this class who's a little more refined? There's a lot of underclassmen in this draft. I mean, that's been duly noted. Just about anywhere you pay attention, or anywhere you hear anything about the draft, I guess. Who's a guy in this class among these wide receivers who's a little more polished in terms of their route running ability? Maybe the offense that they were in was a little more suitable towards the NFL game, so on and so forth, but may not have the physical skills that Metcalf might have.
Yeah. So if you're going just from like, he's not the fastest guy in the whole world, but he does offer a lot of the same things that Metcalf has, and he's probably wide receiver 2 for a lot of people, is Kelvin Harmon out of NC State. I know a lot of people are big fans of this guy. He's a big physical receiver, catches everything. Body control is fantastic. And, his route running is not poor at all. Like, for a bigger guy, you'd expect his route running to, be a little bit below average, because a lot of big receivers aren't the greatest route runners. But he is very soft feet, like very quick feet too. And he honestly looks like, just for the college game, I'm not making this a pro comparison or anything, he looks like a DeAndre Hopkins type guy, just because, when you watch him in college, you just draw comparisons. I watched a lot of DeAndre Hopkins this year, especially because they played the Colts 3 times.
Right.
And when I watch, NC State film, I see like the DeAndre Hopkins of college football, and he just makes all the plays. He catches everything. And I think if, a team looking for an ideal X receiver, a guy who can be that possession type guy who can go over the top a little bit, and be a really reliable player, I mean, Kelvin Harmon's going to make a team very happy.
Yeah, I mean, that would make the Colts happy. That's exactly what the Colts could really use, if anything else.
Yeah, and he might be there in the first round. I'm not too sure because it all depends on his 40 time. If his 40 time is in, say, high 4.5s, low 4.6s, which it could be. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be like the low 4.5s, high 4.4s. He definitely could fall to late first round, but as of right now, I think he's probably going to be the second or third receiver off the board. He might go in the teens, maybe early 20s.
And let's, when it comes to the 40-yard, I mean, look, yes, you want the guy to be fast. I mean, obviously, let's not, we're not breaking any news here. Everybody likes the guys that are fast, but when it comes to what the Colts need in this offense, I mean, I just don't see the need for a guy to take the top off the defense. I see a guy needs to be able to catch those intermediate to short crossing patterns, and then to be able to do something after the catch. Yeah. Okay, there's where your speed, but this is field speed we're talking about, in-game speed. We need that to be fast. We don't need their 40 time to be lightning, in my opinion. So, I mean, maybe the two go hand in hand to a point, but we've all seen it. Some of these guys play so much faster with pads on than others who ran better 40 times, and then vice versa. But the Colts don't need a guy that's going to burn up the rail on these this secondaries. They need the guy that can catch that ball underneath and do something with the ball afterwards.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree, especially when you watch the film from last year, before Dontrell Inman got there, they really needed that kind of player. They didn't have any player who could really catch the ball underneath, a guy who could, be a safety net for Andrew Luck, especially when Jack Doyle went down. And when they missed him for a couple games, they didn't have Dontrell Inman yet. There was really a lack of consistency on pass catchers. Guys were not really catching the ball. And, when they were catching it, they were making plays, but, it doesn't make that much a difference if you're not catching the ball. So that is definitely something the Colts need. I will say, though, when I was doing the build of Ballard and I was looking at a lot of players that he's drafted at the receiver position, he likes a lot of speed guys. He likes a lot of projects. He doesn't really invest high picks in them because I feel like he trusts the receiver's ability to develop more so than other positions. He'll take an edge guy early. He'll take an interior offensive lineman early. He'll take those guys early. But I think he trusts receivers' ability to develop, and that's why I think that we saw he was so high on a guy like Deion Kane last year, guy who was a 6th-round pick, guy who fell. He was a high recruit, and they were so high on him because he came in, he showed that he could develop, and he showed a lot of things in the camp. So it's gonna be really interesting how they decide to address that position. But if he doesn't spend an early pick on them, I could definitely see like a mid-round pick again going to that position, or maybe even 2 mid-round picks going to that position.
Yeah, and the way that they use Kane, I mean, look, Kane didn't play last year, but the way that they were using him early in practices, early in the season or the preseason, and the way that they were using him a little bit in training camp, they were using him more of that guy running those 15-yard deep ends. And that was where he was really effective too, because he had that really good change of direction at the top of his route. And we didn't see a ton of him crossing the field. He was more along those guys to finding that zone, coming, sitting in it, and then battle for the ball, whether it would be a 50-50 ball, occasionally downfield, or whatever. But he's pretty good, I think, at doing something with the ball after the catch as well. I just see that would be a better complement to what Deion Kane actually brings, because I just still don't feel like Darius Fountain is going to be prepared to start next season. No. Maybe late in the year he can continue to develop a little bit, but I don't see him being a top 3 or 4 receiver on this team next year come week 1. That's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so when we look at this group, does it really feel to you that they need another number 2, or do they need that slot guy that can kind of do it all?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need both. Honestly, they do need both. I've always kind of been of the mindset going into this offseason here. I really do think that they're gonna, Ty is gonna be the number 1 guy. He'll always be the number 1 guy for years to come. And I think that Kane, in their opinion, is a top 4 receiver on this team. I think that they have very high hopes for him. I think that that 4th receiver spot, maybe the 3rd spot even, is going to be his spot to lose. And then I think a lot of the guys that we saw last year are going to be competing for that 5th or 6th spot. So you'll see guys like Marcus Johnson, Zach Pascal, Chester Rogers, Darius Fountain. They'll all be competing for that 5th and 6th spot. And I think to fill those middle needs will be one free agent receiver and one draft receiver. That's kind of where I've been with my head this whole offseason, thinking, there are other outside receiver could be like a Tyrell Williams type guy, and Adam Humphries, who people keep throwing out there, who I'm not super high on, but Adam Humphries could be a decent fit out there. Guys like that, maybe even a Devontae Parker, if he gets cut. Those are the type of guys that they could fit on the outside, and then in the draft they could go for more of the speedy guy, the slot guy, the guy who can separate and get open. But if they don't get that free agent and they don't try to get that big splash, they could definitely be going for a big outside receiver who can win jump balls and win contested passes, and a speedy slot guy who can kind of win after the catch and catch the ball underneath and kind of get downfield.
Yeah, and for all intents and purposes, at least Humphries would certainly take care of that slot need.
Yeah.
I mean, is he elite? I don't know, but or whatever. But he definitely would take care of a need for them there. That would make this draft a lot easier, I think, to where you could maybe take a guy late in the draft as well as and try to find yourself a guy in the maybe just anywhere in the first 3 rounds to come in and compete for that top 5, top 6 spot.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're trying to do. I think they want to at least get someone in free agency. That way they don't really feel like receiver is this need that we have to spend a first or second round pick on. They like to have their positions be like, okay, we don't need to spend a pick on this position. We don't have to like pigeonhole ourselves into a position in the first, second round. That's what good GMs do. They don't pigeonhole themselves. They don't make it so they have to address a need with their picks. And I think Bowers going to do a great job of that. I think he's going to bring in at least one free agent, and he's not going to feel pigeonholed to take a receiver. If one falls into his lap that he really likes, he could take one in the first round or the second round. But if one doesn't, he can wait until day 3. He's gonna have that flexibility. He knows what he's doing, and I think that's kind of going to be the route that they're going to take.
Yeah, he actually had a real good interview on the Pat McAfee show. What was that, today or yesterday? I don't remember.
I think it was today.
Really interesting to kind of hear him kind of go through that. We've heard him talk about his mindset when it comes to the draft and all that. But it just I don't know that it ever gets old, to be quite honest with him, because he just always seems like he's just such a logical guy when it comes to it. Like, what the hell, man, we're gonna do what we got to do. It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know why I like to hear him say the same things he's said ever since he's been in Indianapolis, but it just doesn't get old.
It's nice hearing a transparent GM, a good transparent GM. It's really cool hearing that, for sure.
I agree. So let's talk about some more of these guys that are a little more well-known, I think, or at least the names that guys have been hearing. And then I want you to give me some guys that are maybe flying under the radar a little bit that can make some impacts. But we've heard of N'Keal Harry, AJ Brown. You mentioned him earlier, also from Ole Miss. Deebo Samuel, a couple other guys in here. Who are these guys? Is kind of that maybe that 4th or 5th outside guy who could come in and just kind of leapfrog these guys and be the guy next year in the NFL in terms of the rookie standout?
It depends where they fall. I think to me at least, N'Keal Harry, AJ Brown, and Deebo Samuel, I think they're all kind of in that second tier range of receiver going into this draft, right behind Metcalf and Harmon. I think they're all kind of competing there. I would also throw Riley Ridley in there too. I know a lot of people are a big fan of him, but all these guys, it kind of depends on their landing spot. They're all good players. I think they all could have great careers in the NFL, but I also could see them not panning out. Like Harry, when people watch his film, there's a lot of reservations on how he can separate, how his route running is, because he's a bigger guy, but he doesn't look that athletic. He can win at the catch point, but he's not the 6'5" towering receiver. So it's definitely going to be a tougher transition for him, because his route running and separation is just so big in the NFL nowadays. And, people have their questions with that. And then AJ Brown, I actually saw someone compare him the other day to Jarvis Landry, which, at first it doesn't seem like that big of a slight, but would you draft a Jarvis Landry type in the first round? Maybe not, so, and I also could see that he's great after the catch. He makes, really nice, strong catches, but overall, is he really this deep threat guy? He might run like 4.6s, just like a Jarvis Landry did. So right. you have to weigh a lot of these guys. For the Colts, personally, I think Riley Ridley and Deebo Samuel would be great fits for him, just because I think that they are better route runners between the two, and I think that between the 4 guys there, and I think that they separate better. So Deebo Samuel, Riley Ridley, they should probably both be there by the 34th pick. If Ballard wants to go receiver route there, I think both those guys would be great fits.
That wouldn't be bad at the top of the second. I mean, it wouldn't bother me any, going wide receiver. I think I would be a little anxious if they went wide receiver in the first round, just didn't work out the first time, most recently, I suppose.
There's a bad track record for receivers in the first round. I mean, it's been rough recently, so I understand the concern, especially with Philip Dorsett not too long ago for the Colts. So I get it.
Talk about a sour taste that still's on the tongue of a lot of Colts fans, most definitely. So, folks, we're going to take a real quick break right here, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk some of the bigger wide receivers, and then we're going to get into more of the slot guys here with Zach Hicks here in just a moment. All right, folks, we are back. Tell me about Hakeem Butler out of Iowa State, Antoine Wesley out of Texas Tech, and Lil Jordan Humphrey at Texas. I mean, it's big boys, not necessarily in the top 5, top 6 group, that top tier of these wide receivers that are going to be outside guys. But tell me about them. What do they offer? What kind of where do they fit in terms of their total skill sets?
Yeah, so Hakeem Butler is a guy who could definitely rise this week, because I know a lot of people are, he's kind of all over the place. People either have him as like a first round prospect, or they have him as like a 4th, 5th, 6th round prospect, because I think there's a lot of different opinions on how fast he really is. There's people saying that he's like an Alden Tate type speed guy, like a 4.7 or a 4.8, which is, I don't see that on film, honestly. I think he's probably more in that 4.5s range, maybe low 4.6s, but that's fine. He's a jump ball receiver, and when you say jump ball receiver, you can say that about a lot of the guys in this class. He's the jump ball receiver in this class. It's just throw it up and get him. His hands are a little inconsistent, especially when he doesn't have a guy to jump over. But he measured in with the longest wingspan in the history of the combine for receivers. I think it was 84 inches, I believe. I don't know, 84, 83. That's absolutely insane. Yeah, he looks like a praying mantis for sure. Yeah, but I mean, he's a good player. I think that if the Colts were to grab him in, say, the early 2nd round, maybe even the late 2nd round pick, because there's just so many receivers in this class. If they could get him with their late 2nd round pick to be that starter outside of T.Y. Hilton, I mean, he'll catch everything. He'll jump over guys. He can even create after the catch, so you can scheme some touches for him that way. I think he'd be a great fit. Wesley's more of that red zone type guy. He's really not going to run that well. When I say not going to run that well, I think 4.6s, maybe a 4.7, but probably 4.6s. But yeah, he doesn't have that much production, but he's got quick feet, great hands. He can go up and get it over all these guys. And then Lil Jordan Humphrey, I know a lot of people are not very high on him. Other people, especially Texas guys, they love him. They think he's one of the best receivers in his class. I just don't think he's that great of an athlete, and I think he's very inconsistent. But I think, again, that's you kind of have to weigh that with these jump ball receivers. They're not going to be the fast guys. They're not going to separate. But can they out-physical these NFL corners? Guys like Hakeem Butler, I really think can. Wesley, I'm pretty sure can. And Jordan, I just have questions of, because I don't know how much of a talent he is. But all 3 of them are jump ball receivers. For me, though, Hakeem Butler is the guy of those 3 for sure.
Yeah, and Humphrey carries a little more bulk than the other 2. About another
he's thicker.
20 pounds, so
yeah.
That definitely makes a difference. So talk to us about a couple of these guys in here that they're flying under the radar a little bit, if we haven't already spoken about them, that you feel like could really make an impact in the next level.
Oh, yeah. Emmanuel Hall out of Missouri. Definitely keep an eye on that guy. He is really quick, really fast. His change of direction speed is insane. Honestly, in my opinion, I think he's probably going to run the best 3-cone. And he's like a 6'2" receiver, and I think he's going to run the best 3-cone. I mean, he's an insane athlete. He missed the Senior Bowl last second because of an injury. But man, he's a really good player, and I don't think enough people are talking about him in this class. Mm-hmm. He's going to wow some people at the combine here. And then just looking at my notes here. I mean, there's a lot of slot. Andy Isabella, I know a lot of people love him. He's a really quick, shifty slot guy. Keelan Doss was a guy who I loved down at the Senior Bowl, a small guy from UC Davis. Or not small guy, but from a small school, UC Davis. 6'2" guy, catches everything, runs really crisp routes, and he looked like a great athlete down there at the Senior Bowl. And then, while talking about the Senior Bowl, Terry McLaurin, I mean, he's getting a lot of love, and he definitely deserves it. Great route runner, very smooth, easy speed. Ran a 4.3 something, I think, at the Ohio State's pro day or combine, their combine thing they had before the season. He ran the 4.3s, and, Ohio State's pretty accurate about that stuff. So Terry McLaurin is going to be a fast guy, catches a lot of balls. And when I did my build to Ballard, he was like the #1 guy who I pegged to the Colts because of his special team ability, his leadership, along with all these other factors. So those are some guys that I think the Colts could be interested, especially McLaurin and Hall. I think those are two guys that Ballard's going to fall in love with.
Tell me about the kid from Stanford, Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah, I'm actually not a big fan of J-Jaw is what his nickname is, JJ, J-Jaw. I'm not a huge fan of him. He came in at 6'2" today, and he plays like he's 6'5". He looks like he's 6'5". And his big trait again is the jump balls. It's winning guys. It's winning routes by out battling corners. And I don't know if a 6'2" guy who's pretty slow is really going to be that type of guy in the NFL. So I'm not a huge fan of his. I don't think he's really that great a route runner or that great a separator. I mean, he's got great hands. He goes up there and competes for every pass, but a slower guy that's only 6'2" and doesn't really separate, that's just hard for me to kind of get behind,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That isn't easy. But there's also a lot of slot guys in this group. You mentioned Isabella and a couple others, but Marquise Brown is a guy that gets a lot of talk. What about Renfro?
Yeah.
And maybe even the kid out of Wake Forest, Dortch. Some of these guys, they're up and down.
Yeah, I mean it's so crazy how different people have their rankings, and there's even some taller slot guys. Dylan Mitchell out of Oregon was a super productive receiver this last year. Great athleticism, great change of direction, catches almost everything, and he is great after the catch as well. And then Jacoby Myers out of NC State looked great down at the Senior Bowl. Was beating our boy Monty O on a couple routes. We're not going to say his name again, but Jacoby Myers is great too. So those are two of the bigger slot guys. But going to the shorter guys, Paris Campbell is a speedy guy. Hollywood Brown's a speedy guy, even though he came in at 166 today, which was a little slight. Even though Oklahoma listed him at 166 all year, I mean that's just small, man. That's really small for the NFL game.
Mm-hmm.
But those are both some speedsters there, and then Andy Isabella. People have talked about it all year. He beat Denzel Ward in the 100-meter dash or whatever in high school. Wow. And Denzel Ward ran, I think, a 4.34 last year. So how fast is Andy Isabella going to run? We'll see, this week. But a lot of really intriguing slot guys for sure.
There's a little bit of that. Okay, everybody gets that perfect slot guy, and people want to talk about whoever, the ultimate slot guy for Andrew Luck in this. But, I think a lot of them, for that matter, said that about Renfro too, but none with Isabella's speed, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Isabella's speed is insane. He might be the fastest receiver, in this combine here. Emmanuel Hall might compete, and Paris Campbell will probably be up there as well. But those are probably the three fastest receivers, especially with Hollywood Brown not running. Those are going to be the three fastest guys we'll probably see this week.
So where do we get the small school talent out of this group?
Keelan Doss, who I already mentioned, from UC Davis, FCS school. He's really talented. He might be one of the top, 15 or so receivers taken in this class, and he's going to be a good talent in the NFL. Not as small, but Fresno State, Keyshawn Johnson, excellent route runner. Excellent route runner. He's like a Sterling Shepard type guy. He's going to run great routes. He's going to catch balls over the middle. He could be a perfect slot guy for the Colts too, because he's going to be able to separate. And then a very under the radar guy with Jazz Ferguson. I believe he was a LSU recruit or one of the SEC schools. Someone listening can probably correct me on that there. But Jazz Ferguson went to, it was like really small school, like Northern Iowa or Northwestern State or something like that. Really small school guy though, like 6'4", 230. And reportedly is running in the 4.3s in his workouts. So if he comes out and runs 4.3s or low 4.4s in his workouts this week at 6'4", 220, he's going to be flying up boards, because that's absolutely insane.
That is insane. That's wicked fast. I'm not from Boston, but that is wicked fast. No two ways about it. So the Colts need, as you mentioned, they need both probably a slot guy. They need a guy that they can at least kind of develop into that number 2 role. Is there any chance at all that they try to find, or not that they try to find, but that they go after a guy similar to, and I'm not saying as in a comp, but in terms of a fast guy that they could see putting on the outside, who could also be somewhere in the same stature wise as T.Y. Hilton? Is that even a possibility in your eyes?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. Maybe not that small, just because from a blocking perspective, it's definitely going to be putting you at a disadvantage, especially running sweeps and stuff like that to those sides,
For sure.
which the Colts run a lot of. They like getting the receivers out there blocking. Inman was a great blocker last year. Zach Pascal was actually an excellent blocker last year. He was mowing guys down just like he was an offensive lineman. So they like the receivers to block a little bit. But I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, Ballard likes his speed, and speed opens up a lot. If you can get say Andy Isabella is their draft pick, and they put him on the outside, which he probably wouldn't be on the outside, but let's just say they put him on the outside across from Ty. If you have Isabella clearing out routes with say 4.3 speed, that can open up Hilton to run more underneath routes, Jack Doyle catching more underneath passes, Eric Ebron getting more shallow crosses, inside post, 10, 15-yard ins. It just opens a lot of your offense up. So getting another speed guy, another smaller guy on the outside even, I think it just opens up your game a lot more.
Let me ask you this, because this is something that I don't think the Colts were really all that good at this year. Who was there a guy that stood out to you that may have been the best at some of the bubbles or the tunnel screens or anything like that in terms of after the catch?
Yeah, and Harry, man, he's really good after the catch, especially for a guy. I think he came in at 6'3" or 6'4" today. For a guy with his size, he's very elusive after the catch, and I think throwing him bubbles, throwing him some screens, I think he can really create after it. If you give him those scheme touches like Chester Rogers was kind of given last year. I know a lot of Chester Rogers had scheme touches last year. Give those to a guy like N'Keal Harry, he's going to get even more yards. And then another guy, Paris Campbell out of Ohio State. Get him. He's not the most finished product, but he's going to be blazing. He's going to run 4.3 something, maybe even 4.2s. If you get him those scheme touches, I mean, he can get in the open field. He'll be electric.
Okay, so no, forgive me if you've already talked about this, but I mean, at least I didn't intend to ask it if I did. Who's the guy that's most overrated in this class?
Overrated's tough because I like a lot of these receivers. I mean, probably J-Jaw and A.J. Brown, I would say, are my two most overrated. But, I think in the right NFL system, they could definitely succeed. They're both talented receivers. If they go to an offense where they're not relied on to be the number one guy, I think they could both be pretty solid players. But I've seen some first round talk for these two guys, and I don't really see it. Maybe Brown more so than Arcadia Whiteside, but yeah, I'm not as high on those two as a lot of other people are.
Is there a guy in this group that is probably getting a little bit more pub even than they should, that you just don't even think is a maybe even a viable NFL receiver?
That's tough.
Isn't it? I mean, it wouldn't even be that drastic. I mean, I guess is what I'm saying, because this group is such an odd collection of receivers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of talent, but I mean, it's hard. It's hard because you don't hear one name being that next great receiver.
Yeah, I mean, besides maybe Metcalf, you don't really hear like the elite receiver. And Metcalf could be that because he has all the traits, but yeah, it's just a really solid group. It's a really deep group. I wouldn't even say any of the guys that are projected to go, day one, day two, are really like Jags, so to speak. Just a guy. Like I don't really see that. Maybe that one dude who was down at the Senior Bowl, the Louisville receiver. I think it was Jalen Smith or whatever his name was. Had no business being down there, but so I guess maybe him. But I don't know. I like this receiver class. I guess him because he wouldn't be in my top like 40 receivers in this class. So I don't know how he got that Senior Bowl invite, but it's a really good class. You're going to find talent. If Ballard, devotes a draft pick or two to a guy in this class at receiver, he's going to come away with a good player.
Still got an opportunity to find some undrafted guys, you think, out of this group?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's going to be some undrafted guys. There'll be some talented players who go undrafted, and I don't know off the list of guys I said today, but there'll be some talented guys who go undrafted. Maybe even like a Cody Thompson type guy who 2 years ago had the most yards per catch in college football from Toledo. Had a rough year this last year, like didn't really put up the numbers that he always puts up. And he's not really the greatest athlete, but great route runner, great catching, special teams type guy too. He could be an undrafted free agent potentially in this class, and he could, really make waves in the NFL. So it's just a deep class. Like I said, I think I could see 30 to 35 guys like making rosters from this class. It probably won't be that high, but if you throw out 30 to 35 of these names, I could definitely see them making rosters at least.
That's interesting. So we got Riley Ridley, Deebo Samuel, and Andy Isabella, three guys that you said you think could best be fit or would best fit with the Colts. Give me one more.
Yeah, I mean, Terry McLaurin, I want to keep talking about him because I mocked him to the Colts, my late second round pick in my first mock draft of the year. And a lot of people said that was too high for him. And just turn on the tape, watch a full game. He doesn't get all the targets that you would expect, especially in a high-powered offense like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got easy speed. His route running is great. Changes direction. He breaks down his hips really well, and he just dominated all the competition at the Senior Bowl. Like going into the week, Deebo Samuel was the guy, and the rest of the receivers were pretty known names, and McLaurin was kind of this special teams guy. But McLaurin went down there, and he just dominated guys. I mean, he was outside of Deebo, he was the best receiver down there, and I think he's going to turn some heads this week at the Combine. He's going to interview great, and I think that come draft time, he could be a late second, early third round pick for sure.
Interesting. So you think that the Colts actually re-sign Chester?
Maybe. It depends. I think I think all their priority free agent, like their restricted free agent guys, I think they could bring back to compete for that 5th, 6th role, but it just depends. It depends how a lot of this offseason goes here, but I do think at the very least Pascal, Fountain, and Johnson will be competing for those last 2 spots.
Mm-hmm. See, I actually don't think that they bring him back. I'm just personal opinion. I don't think that they could. I don't think it'd be a big deal if they did. Or not that I would like necessarily vote against it. For a total stupid comment, but that's just my opinion. I just don't think that they will for some reason. When you've got Deion Kane, like you said, they like Marcus Johnson. Frank Reich likes Marcus Johnson, and they've got a guy that can kind of fill in there with what they want in terms of finding that extra possession guy in Dontrell Inman if they chose to re-sign somebody. Yes, he's older, but he definitely fills that void, in my opinion, more so than Chester Rogers fills a void for the offense in terms of what they're trying to do. But Chester is liked within the organization as well. So, I'm not trying to say I'd go against him. I'm just saying that I just feel like they won't. They've got Ishmael, they've got Hogan, they've got some other guys in there that can fill that. You're looking to free agency, you're looking to the draft. I guess what I'm trying to get at is I just kind of feel like he might be the odd man out.
Yeah, and I can see that. They definitely like him, and I will say one thing going in his favor is as the season progressed, he got better on his special teams play, and even as a receiver, he got more consistent when he wasn't really relied on to be like the number 2 guy or the number 3 guy. Even when he was more of like the number 5 guy, even, or the number 4 guy, he definitely got better later in the year. So that could definitely play in his favor, and I think that might lead to them at least bringing him back to compete for that 5th or 6th role. But if they let him go, it's not that huge a deal. They'll find someone who can play that role, who can be that punt returner, kick returner type guy, who can be their 5th or 6th receiver that can get some snaps in there. It's not a huge role to replace, but he's going to have a competition, I think, and I think wherever he goes, he's going to be competing for a roster spot. But yeah, he's not like an essential role player that they can't lose. He's a good player, but he's not that essential. Where I think Inman is more essential, but I think kind of their plan with him is they're seeing if they could upgrade him in free agency, and if they don't, they'll come back to him and bring him back to kind of fill that role that he did last year.
I agree. I totally agree. I think this is a really I say this and then I'm going to go ahead and contradict myself as soon as I get it out of my mouth, because I want to say that this is such a pivotal off season for the Colts at the position. But at the same time, you continue to see this past year. Let's put it this way. This past year, you saw Andrew Luck do similarly to what Peyton Manning used to do in the past, taking virtual no names or guys who just weren't great and turn them into some pretty good receivers. Pascal did it, Luck did it a little bit in his rookie year, even, with some of those guys that were on the club. But I guess you just can't rely on that every year. You've got to give him some talent. You're going to see Deion Kane come up next year. Hopefully, he has the confidence with that knee and that everything is okay with that. But I would love to see them like drastically upgrade the position. I truly would. On one hand, I say they don't need a drastic upgrade. On the other hand, if they've got the opportunity to do it, I would love to see it happen. I would love to see it be a strength as opposed to a bunch of role players and TY.
Yeah, and I will definitely say a name to watch in free agency, which a lot of people have thrown out there. Tyrell Williams makes a lot of sense. He has the San Diego connection. Or the LA connection, I guess is what it is, not San Diego. I guess when Reich was there, it was San Diego. But he has that connection there, for that same team, and he does a lot of what the Colts like. He's a high character guy. He can go down the field, he can get open, and he can open up the game a little bit more for a guy like T.Y. Hilton. And he's also a bigger type receiver. So I think they're going to pursue him, I think, in free agency. And if they strike out, they'll come back to a guy like Inman. So either way, you're going to kind of have that reliance there. And then I think that they will spend a pick in the draft. Like, I know a lot of people are saying Ballard hates receivers and he hates upgrading receivers. And I wish he would do that. It's not that, honestly. I don't think he values the position as importantly as, the offensive line or defensive line. So early in the rebuild process, he wasn't really spending high capital. Now, when you have the offensive line, you have the makings of a good defensive line that he still needs to kind of put together, and you have your elite quarterback, you're going to see him start targeting the playmakers, the receivers, the corners, those type of guys. And I think that this roster is really going to take some shape this offseason.
Yep, I agree. And and to add to your point, Williams has got some of that deep speed.
Yeah.
And that's big, especially when you've got the body type that he's got, and he's got the ability to be on or to run some underneath routes. I think it's really a key role to be able to do all of that. And not when you look at what Deon Cain, and I'm high on Deon Cain. I think everybody should be, just from what he showed last year before he was injured. Having two guys that can do that, that's real weapons there at the wide receiver position for Andrew Luck. I think that's going to make this team considerably better if something like that were to take shape, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think Tyrell Williams is the one of the highest priority free agents, at least for me, when I'm watching some free agent guys getting excited for this offseason. I definitely think Tyrell Williams would be a great fit in this offense, and I think just all the signs are kind of pointing to it. A lot of cap space for the Colts. He wouldn't really demand like a 4 or 5 year deal, so he'll be off the books by the time all these rookies are due for contracts. And he just complements Ty and Luck so well, and I think that he's going to have fast chemistry with those guys. So I think a guy like Tyrell will make a lot of sense, and then draft a high upside rookie in the draft, and I think we'll just go from there. You'll have a top 4 that will be Tyrell Williams, T.Y. Hilton, Deon Cain, and then a high upside rookie. And I think that's a big upgrade from this last season, of course. Substantially.
I absolutely agree. And that would be a fun season to come into as well. I mean, hoping that everybody can stay healthy, obviously. You've got that. And then you see that you've got some developmental guys behind it. And then you've got competition on the back end to be that number 6 guy on the roster as well. So you've got it really about everywhere that you need it in terms of the top 2 or 3. You've got the talent level. You've got that mid-tier group of guys that are really fighting for playing time and snaps. And then you've got the guys that legitimately are a 6th receiver, 5th, 6th receiver on any team that could be battling for that final spot on the roster. And that's fun. That's where it's at. That's when the roster is starting to be a little thicker, and then you can actually put you can actually put a little bit of hope behind that receiver core. So that's going to be fun to watch this year. So I'm excited for it, man. Zach, always excellent stuff, my man. Thank you for schooling us on this wide receiver core. Tell everybody where they can catch you on Twitter once again.
Yeah, guys, give me a follow on Twitter at Zach Hicks 2. I'm trying to keep the bad takes to a minimum now, so it's more of just my draft bad takes instead of my lifestyle bad takes. So yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Zach Hicks 2. I try to respond to a lot of people. I'm even in a big Colts Twitter group chat, I think, with like 50 people. I have it muted, so it's not the crazy comments coming at me. But come on there, interact with me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. Whatever. I love the interaction. I'll talk to you guys whenever.
Absolutely. Zach's great at what he does. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you guys are checking these out. We're going to continue to do more of these. We enjoy doing these. We love the conversation. And I think that a lot of you guys enjoy this as well, whether you're viewing on YouTube, whether you're listening on the podcast, however you are taking this in. But we enjoy doing it. I think you guys are enjoying checking it out. So we're going to continue to go position by position with Colts needs. Primarily, we may branch out afterwards and go additional positions, but we want to talk Colts needs initially because, look, the combine is here. I mean, it is literally, on-field workouts start tomorrow. Is that right, Zach?
Yeah, it's running backs and offensive linemen are tomorrow morning at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. Eastern time.
Yes, and then that goes through Sunday. And then, man, it's really a weird dead period there, and then you get into free agency, and then you get the draft, and then we go kind of blank for a while. So we've got a good solid 2 months here of excellent draft and free agency stuff. We're going to keep you guys as busy as we can. So make sure you guys are getting to Stampede Blue for all your Indianapolis Colts needs, news, and analysis. check us out here on YouTube. Check us out on the podcast. Leave us a rating and review on iTunes. And Zach, thank you again for joining us, my man.
Yeah, anytime, man. I love coming on. Have a blast talking about the draft with you guys.
Absolutely. Guys, check us out. We'll be back on next week. Probably try to get you guys here either Monday night, maybe Sunday night. I don't know about Sunday night. Probably Monday night. We'll get you at least another 3 shows next week as well. We'll continue to do this. We're just going to jive it on. And we've got a lot to talk about. So we'll talk to you guys all next time right here on the Colts Cast.